Hello there, Wrestless fans. Today I have the absolute honor of getting to interview one of the hottest products from AAPW over in Austin, Texas. He is a former AAPW Wrestling Champion, a former AAPW Tag Team Champion at the young age of 17. It's Houston freaking Hendrix. How are you, man?
I am doing phenomenal, and thank you for having me on this podcast, Jake.
Of course, of
You
course.
did your
And
research too. You got all my accomplishments.
I'm telling you, man. I always love to give research on my guests, and actually, I do want to start off by the first time I was introduced to you, or at least in person, Houston Hendrix was at a Texas Indie Showcase 3, and that was
Yes.
really cool to see you. But I remember when we first met, you gave me this funny face, like I feel like I know this guy. And then I noticed a little bit. I feel like I know this guy.
Yeah.
For you, for you guys back at home, me and Houston Hendrix. I knew Houston Hendrix before Houston Hendrix was cool. I knew him as
Damn.
the man behind the character, Miles Watson. We went to the same high school, and we were on the same wrestling team actually. And I kind of want to like talk about that for the people at home because everyone knows Houston Hendrix. No one really knows like the background of your, I guess, like tiny amateur wrestling career.
Yeah.
Um, I guess for people at home, how was your experience with like just like scholastic wrestling? Do you think it was like the stepping stone to join the professional wrestling world when you first joined amateur wrestling?
It was definitely the stepping stone. I just want to preface this. I was not good in amateur wrestling to all the viewers. I sucked very badly. I also have a jiu-jitsu background, and
Mm,
that was like my bread and butter. But amateur, I sucked. I was so bad. And I do feel like it was a stepping stone in the sense of I got like a taste of like wrestling. Because in professional wrestling, there are aspects of amateur wrestling in it. And I think I knew that because like all the big wrestlers have stories of amateur. So I just want to try it out myself. But yeah, we did go to the same high school. Man, I was 113 pounds wrestling.
how much do you weigh now?
Not that much more. I'm like 145, 150. But
That's still pretty good, man.
but yeah, it was a really fun experience. Everyone there was super cool. I remember I can name drop so many names of people that I miss from amateur. But yeah, I was a freshman. That was the only year I did it. I think you were a
Yeah,
junior at the
I think
time,
so. Yeah.
2021.
Yeah,
Yeah.
junior. Yeah. And I mean, yeah, I mean, I want to name drop one person or I guess two people because I was actually talking about you with them. Um, and people at home probably won't know him, so whatever. It's
Yeah.
Noah Martinez, right? And
Oh yeah.
Jonathan,
Yeah.
Johnny, Wayside Drive. Um,
Yeah.
Shout out to that band.
Love them. I love them, man. I
Hell
wish I
yeah,
could talk to
man.
them more.
Yeah.
Johnny went to professional wrestling for a little bit too.
Yeah, I remember I saw him at a New Texas Pro Show,
Yeah.
and I was like, "Oh shit, what are you doing here?" And he's like, "Oh man, I used to train here, and now I want to watch the shows with JJ Blake." And so that's really cool.
Yeah.
And I guess like so you only were doing amateur wrestling for 1 year,
Yeah.
and I mean, by the way, just like personally, I'm proud of how you grew because the person that I knew, I feel like the confidence wasn't all the way there when it's like your freshman year. And like, I didn't even know it was Miles Watson when I first watched you. I was like, damn, this guy's good. And my former podcast buddy, still good friends with them, Hottie, he was like, we need to get Houston Hendrix on the show. And finally, we have Houston freaking Hendrix on the show. Um, but so you quit first year amateur wrestling, and considering your passion for professional wrestling, and how you wanted to be a professional wrestler, did did like amateur wrestling and like how I guess you weren't like the absolute like best at it,
Yeah.
but did you have like did that give you any doubts of becoming a professional wrestler at all? Would you say?
Uh, no, because I know they're two very different things. And especially once you like get into a professional wrestling ring and start training, I think that's whenever you really realize it, how different it is. Because with amateur, you have I guess, negative of being like severely malnourished the entire time because you're always cutting weight. Like me, for example, I cut like 20 pounds to weigh 113. It was awful that year. I was always like just drained, but I feel like the difference was, how do I explain it? I think stepping in the ring for the first time, like the pro wrestling ring, it was like that's whenever the confidence you were talking about came through. Like I realized like, okay, I think I got this. I think this is the moment where I can like find who Miles Watson is, and then later on found who Houston Hendrix was.
Mm.
If that even makes sense.
No, no, I feel you. When was that like birth of Houston Hendrix? You know, because when did that like? I guess like you were like, I'm gonna be Houston Hendrix. I feel like that confidence kind of contributed to your own personal confidence as Miles Watson. And just I guess how'd you come up with that name? And yeah.
It's my debut was very rushed. I was told
Mhm.
like 2 weeks beforehand I was gonna be debuting,
Oh.
and I still didn't have like a lot of confidence. I was still like, okay, I still got a couple more months at least. And then
Mhm.
my trainer was like, all right, you got 2 weeks. Come with some gear, come with a name, come with everything. I'm like, oh God. So I was talking about a name. I knew I liked the name Hendrix. At first, I wanted Darby Hendrix, but
Oh.
that was the name I had for a while. But AEW had just started getting popular at the time, so Darby Allin was already a big name, so I couldn't use Darby anymore. So I thought of Miles Hendrix. That doesn't really roll off the tongue that well. I also thought of Caleb Hendricks. Doesn't roll off the tongue very well. And I was talking to Pops about how like it's crazy how because I as soon as I moved to Austin, I went to AAPW, which was July of 2021, and I debuted in December of 2021. So I was talking to Pops like this has happened very quickly. It's crazy to think that I've been in Austin for as long as I'm wrestling. And he's like, "Where'd you live before Austin?" And I said, "Houston." And he goes, "Houston. That's a cool name actually." And I kind of agreed with him. I was like, "Yeah, Houston's a pretty cool name." So we thought of Houston Hendrix. It's like the alliteration's there. It rolls off the tongue. It's chantable. Houston, Houston, Houston. It just worked like that. It wasn't like a moment. It was like I had to think about it for a little bit.
Mhm.
But now I kind of like the name. It's starting to grow on me. I didn't like it at first. I'm kind of like it. I kind of like it now. I
Yeah.
think it. I think I look like a Houston, so I think that works out.
And, I mean, I guess you are a Houston now. That's how everyone knows you now,
Yeah,
right?
that's how everyone
Um,
knows me now.
so I think I do remember, or at least, yeah, I do remember you moving away, or like hearing that you were going to move away. I
Yeah,
didn't know where, but so you said like once you hit Austin, you pretty much like had this desire for professional wrestling, and I believe I'm guessing 15, 16 at the time,
yes, I
somewhere
was
around there.
15. Yeah.
What made you like just start so young, and why at Austin, like just like immediately or almost immediately, like I want to do professional wrestling and take it seriously? Because obviously, like it's not easy for someone, especially like
Yeah.
as young as 15.
I'm very glad you asked this because it's actually a really cool story.
Okay.
So when I was 13, before I joined amateur wrestling, I was looking at professional wrestling, and I was looking at Booker T's school down in Texas City, I think it is.
Yeah.
And because I didn't know about Houston Premier Arena, right?
Hmm.
I looked up on Google Houston wrestling schools. Absolutely nothing came up. The closest one was Reality of Wrestling and AAPW. So I couldn't join any of those because Austin was like 150 miles away. Texas City's like 80. So I thought to myself, okay, little 13-year-old Miles came with a plan. I'm going to go to college in Austin and somehow join AAPW and do college at the same time. So that was my plan. So until I turned 18, my plan was amateur wrestling. Just go all 4 years of high school, hopefully get good, and then just go to professional with the amateur background. And I did my freshman year, and moving to Austin was a very quick process. I was like maybe 3 months of me knowing I was moving to Austin. And within that time, I had forgotten about AAPW.
Mm,
Like, because my whole new goal was to get good at amateur.
yeah.
So I moved to Austin, and I was looking at like Google Maps as we like getting into Austin, because AAPW is like on the like right out, like it's almost like outside of Austin. It's almost
Yeah.
out the city. So I hop on Google Maps, right? We had just entered the city. We just saw like Austin city limits, right? I hop on Google Maps. We drive right past AAPW. It's like it was like down the street. It was amazing. I looked over and I just like saw like the little street that leads down to AAPW, and I realized, wow, we're like 5 miles away from my house right now. This could happen at five. This could happen very easily. So I tell my parents. So we get all settled in. We move in. Whatever. I tell my parents, hey, remember AAPW? Right down the road. It's like 5 miles away. So we call it up. We check it out. Get signed up, and the rest is history.
Man. Yeah, I mean, hey, sometimes life just like comes around in a whole circle,
Yeah.
right? um, and I guess also going off that, like, I know that most people, whenever they say I want to be a wrestler or I want to train as a wrestler, to their parents, it's not the most supportive. You know, I've talked to Shimbashi
Yeah.
about it, and not that many people. Dustin Wynn, I think, is another one that. Were your parents supportive throughout like your whole journey in pro wrestling? Were there hesitations about that, or?
My dad loved it because he's the one that like got me into wrestling. But I think my mom took, even at now at this point, is still a little bit skeptical on it because I've done a couple of things to where she like yelled at me, and for like 5 minutes one time after a match she made me quit wrestling because I did a suicide dive and he caught me and suplexed me on the concrete. She did not like that.
Oh,
She did not like
mm,
that at all. And she freaked out for a little bit, but then she like kind of calmed down and was like, you know what, you're fine. You're not hurting. You're not broken in half. I think I'm good. I'm good. But I think now she's starting to warm up to it a little bit.
mhm.
But my dad was always super cool about it because he's the one that got me into wrestling. So why wouldn't he like it? Why wouldn't he think it's cool? You know?
Yeah, man. Well, when was that like? I guess. I mean, going back to your dad, what was that first experience of you ever watching
Oh
professional
God,
wrestling? Would
I
you
was 4
say?
years old. Uh, I don't think I remember exactly when I started wrestling. I do know my oldest memory is Wade Barrett being RKO'd by Randy Orton on top of a car. That's my earliest memory of wrestling. And my second earliest is Edge's retirement and not knowing who the hell he
Oh.
was. But my dad like almost crying in front of the TV screen.
Dad, why are you crying?
Who
Just
is
who is
this?
this
Why is he
kid?
champion? I don't know him. But how I got into wrestling was I was at a friend's house and he had a bunch of like toys and action figures. And for whatever reason, I didn't know who he was. I didn't know who he was at all. But he had like this John Cena action figure. And for whatever reason, I just like really liked it for some reason. And he realized how much I was playing with it with him and stuff. And he was just like, "You just want to keep it?" And I said, "Wow, thank you." And I kept it. I took it home and I showed my dad. And he was like, "Wow, do you know who this is?" And I go, "No, not at all." And he goes, he's a wrestler. He's on TV and he wrestles all the time. His name is John Cena." And I go, "Whoa, what's wrestling?" So he just says, I think it was a Friday that day. So it was late at night. I think SmackDown was on or something. So he was flipping through the channels and he found SmackDown. And that's how I was introduced to wrestling.
Man, that's awesome. I'm pissed off about the way I first met wrestling because I first saw wrestling playing the video games actually,
Yeah.
and then like my favorite was Shawn Michaels in the video games. So when I finally watched on TV for the first time, Shawn Michaels retired. It was the night after
Oh
WrestleMania,
God.
so that was really sad for me. But so talking about the beginning of your professional wrestling career again, um, so you started when you were 15. Was there
Yes.
ever like any limitations or obstacles that you were just so young, um, probably practicing against grown ass men, right?
Yeah. I'm even at 17, I'm the youngest there. I think the second oldest is like 20 something, or the second youngest is like 20 something still. So I'm still a baby to everyone. But obstacle wise, man, so many. I can't even name how many obstacles I've had. I know breaking out of my shell, just because I'm always like just a naturally shy person, like firing up and like talking to like promos especially. That's all like my weak point, just because like I feel so weird knowing that I'm just like everyone sees me like a baby still, and no one's really treated me like a baby though. Everyone like they'll beat the hell out of me if they feel like it. The last match I had before I had to take time off, I got power bombed to hell by Stephen Wolf, so no one's gonna
Uh,
go easy on me, thankfully. Because I'm glad they don't though, because if they did, it would just make the matches worse. So I'm glad everyone sees me as like a baby, but they don't treat me like a baby, if that makes sense. I feel like
yeah.
that's the obstacle I'm trying to get over though, is feeling like everyone else and having that confidence of everyone else.
Nah, I mean, most definitely. And I guess also talking about your age, at least like how much you succeeded in such little time, I feel like, with winning, tag team championships at like 16, 17, or like winning the wrestling AAPW championship, or just like traveling around Texas. How is just that whole experience?
Uh, for the longest time, I didn't know how to drive. So up until very recently, I was always like, if my friends weren't booked, I couldn't go, you know? Uh, so that was always a big thing with me, just because I wasn't old enough to know how to drive to like different promotions. Um, I'm sorry, can you repeat the question?
How's like just this like how do you feel about the success that you've earned so far, winning championships and like traveling around Texas at like such an early, young age?
I feel like it's really cool. Uh, it's kind of a tough question to answer. I still think it feels surreal at some points, just because like you're living your dream at 17 years old, 16 years old, 15 years old. It's just crazy. Sorry about that airplane.
No, you're good. It's
Uh, I don't really know how to explain it. That stuff like that is just always so crazy to think about. How like I'm considered to be like one of the coolest young talents in all of Texas right now, and it really is just crazy to think about.
I mean, do you, I'm trying to think like what was like I guess the furthest you've ever traveled to wrestle? Have you ever been out of state
Not
to wrestle?
very, not out of state. Uh, Either Uvalde or Dallas.
Okay.
I don't know which one's farther. I think Uvalde's a little bit farther, but I really
Mm.
haven't gone that far yet. My Austin, Houston, San Antonio, Uvalde, and Dallas. I think are the only 5 cities I've ever been to.
Mm. Uh, Do you like? Do you think, or have you had like these opportunities that you just couldn't make it, like to go really far out of state, or I guess not too far out of state, that you couldn't because you couldn't drive or anything?
Yeah, I've had a couple of St. Louis
Mm.
and New Jersey, or the two that come to mind. But yeah, that was during school days and stuff. So
Mm.
that's also another thing, like having to be booked on like a Friday, or like
Uh,
in the case of Contender Series Thursdays, you can't make those days because I live in Austin and I can't just go over to Houston and make it in time for a Contender Series booking, or like go out of school on Friday and be in New Jersey by Saturday. Stuff
yeah.
like that's hard to deal with whenever you're still in school. So that's why I try to go crazy for summer vacation this year. I was getting booked all over places. And I don't know if you know this, I'm currently injured. And summer vacation is like my last hurrah for a little bit. So I
Mm.
made sure that to make that opportunity like the Texas tour,
Yeah.
so to speak, to make sure I got my name out there as much as possible before I had to take a undefined amount of time off.
Mhm.
But yeah, it's just really crazy to think about that I'm literally living my dream at 17. It really is just an insane thing to think about.
Definitely, man. Like, I mean, you're working with probably some of the most experienced wrestlers, and you're on the same shows as people who've been on like Impact or even like
Yeah,
AEW. So
yeah.
that's just a, I guess, I mean, here, would you like, would your parents, like, hypothetically, if you had the time and if you had the transportation to get there, would they be supportive of you going by yourself to St. Louis or New Jersey to wrestle?
Again, my mom maybe not so much, but my dad would fight for it, I think. Uh, I know when I was talking to them about St. Louis, I think my dad was more like, let's go than my mom was.
Mhm.
So I feel like if one of them agrees, then at some point the other one will just kind of realize that it's really not that big of a deal, maybe. I don't know, man. Whenever that opportunity presents itself, I think I'll be able to give you a better defined answer. But for now, I'm just working on just working Texas shows, getting my name out in the state of Texas, making sure everyone knows the name Houston Hendrix. So then I could use that name in Texas to go other way, like other places. I mean,
Yeah, maybe you can be like St. Louis Hendrix
St.
up in
Louis Hendrix.
Missouri. um, and so you're I believe a senior in high school right now, right?
Yes, yes.
And is your like reputation known there for being the professional wrestler?
No, actually,
Yeah.
I try to
Keep
keep
it
it
on
a
the down
secret.
low.
Yeah, I keep. It's like a superhero by day, or like a normal kid by day, superhero by night type of thing. I try not to tell a lot of people. I tell my closest friends, and I tell some of my teachers. I actually had my U.S. history teacher last year come to a show, which I thought was pretty cool. But I've told some of my teachers. I've told a couple like my close friends at school, but for the most part, I keep it like a secret. Just because like there's this weird stigma around professional wrestling to where it's all fake
Yeah,
and everyone thinks it's like the weird grown sweaty men fighting in underwear when that's like look beyond the surface and it's a lot more than that. But everyone just like is just gonna clown on me for it, except for like my closest friends who are gonna support me anyway, you know?
I feel you.
So
I
like
mean,
you're a fan. I'm sure you've told friends like, oh, have you ever like watched wrestling recently? It's like, all that weird shit? No, I haven't.
yeah, like I mean, one of my friends. I think you know him. Jonas. Do you remember him, redhead kid in wrestling?
Yes, yeah, I do.
Like he wasn't really a big wrestling fan until like we watched WrestleMania this year. Because he's like, you know what? Maybe this fake shit is pretty entertaining. I guess that's every wrestling fan's
Yeah.
insecurity. And I didn't like it when we were wrestling in high school. That was the reason why I joined wrestling, and that's the reason why I didn't really like share that I loved wrestling because I thought it was embarrassing. It wasn't until
Yeah.
like after like high school, now in college, where I'm like, woo, fucking love professional
Yeah.
wrestling, and I'll share it. I'll share my love.
Yeah.
Um, so I guess going kind of away from your beginnings and sort of staying on that topic, but sort of right now, um, you're known for your high flying cruiserweight style, which never fails to impress me. It's always fucking amazing because junior year in high school, Jake would be so surprised to see Miles Watson, now Houston Hendrix, be this absolute high flying badass doing stuff that is looks so hard to do. So going off that, was that like high flying style difficult to learn? To balance yourself on the ropes, to perfectly execute these jumps and flips, and when was it when you finally mastered like the cruiserweight high flying style?
Uh, I wouldn't even say I'm a cruiserweight high flyer, to be honest. I would consider myself more like just like an athletic style kind of.
Okay.
Because I feel like I really don't do a lot of like dives and stuff. But as for like learning the moves, I never really learned them. I just kind of said, fuck it, we ball, and then did it like in a match for the first time ever. And if I died, I died, you know? Uh, like I know I did a moonsault to like a group of people one day. I don't know how to backflip. I just threw myself backwards and hoped for the best, and it worked. And like Rana, like Hurricane Ranas and stuff, I did that for the first time in the show. And like if I die, I die, you know. But it's definitely. I remember whenever I first started wrestling, I wanted to be like a Zack Sabre Jr. or
Mm,
like a Bryan Danielson type style wrestler, like just grapple. Because I have that experience with grappling.
yeah.
Like I said, not so much amateur, but like jujitsu and stuff. So I wanted to try that out, and then I was like workshopping like my moveset, and I was like, wow, this is actually pretty hard to come up with. So I got in with Danny O'Ryan, and he started like tainting my mind with all his high flying flippy indie shit, and I started liking it myself, and I suddenly became like a more quick, fast paced drop down leapfrog drop kick rana barrel roll suicida backflip type of wrestler, and that's where I am today. I feel like whenever I come back though, I might need to like calm it down a little bit because I'm already getting injured at 17. I might need to
Yeah,
like chill out with that a little bit.
yeah. Don't want your mother to get even more pissed off and reject this pro wrestling. Um, I guess another question is like at 17, professional wrestling. How long would you like to do this? And do you see this going 10 years, 20 years, 30 years in the future?
I definitely see myself. This is gonna sound like such a like a cocky thing to say. I definitely see myself getting like into like the big leagues. Maybe not soon, maybe not even in like 10 years, but at some point I feel like I'll be able to make it, even if it's like Impact, like even like the smaller big league
Yeah.
or like the smaller big league. Even if we're like Impact, I feel like I definitely make myself. I see myself getting a contract somewhere. Right now, my goal isn't to like get signed anywhere. It's just to go to Japan because I'm such a huge Japanese wrestling fan,
Yeah.
and I feel like being over in Japan would be such a cool experience. Whether it's like being as big as New Japan or like some sort of like indie company like Gleet or something. I
Mm-mm.
don't even think Gleet's like a small promotion either, but like you know what I mean.
Yeah, yeah, I know. Um, what I guess also talking about big leagues, and I mentioned earlier how you've kind of met people in the big leagues. Has anyone in those big leagues or smaller big leagues, um, have they ever given you like a useful piece of advice, interacted with you? What was probably your biggest interaction that maybe got you freaked out, or not freaked out, but kind of geeking out, or like helped you in your wrestling career?
Uh, Probably Jay Lethal.
Mm.
Um, for those who don't know, I tagged with Jay Lethal in like January of this year. It
Oh,
was me
really?
and Lethal against Zach Taylor and Zeke Rose, and all four of, or I guess all three of us, excluding Jay, just thought it was like the coolest thing in the world to be able to be in the ring with your idol. But Jay Lethal, he literally just said, just keep being you. And he just said, you're 30 pounds away and 5 years of experience away from being signed. And I always think that's such a cool thing to think of that Jay Lethal told me 5 years away, 30 pounds of muscle. That's all I need.
That,
And he was, when I told him I'd only been wrestling at the time like a year and a half, it blew his mind. He thought I was like 5 years in. So he was really impressed with that match, and I was really happy to hear that from him because it was a crazy experience. Like it didn't when I was in the ring, it felt like a fever dream. Like I did not feel real. Like none of the bumps hurt. I got chopped, didn't even feel it. Like my whole body was just numb the entire match. It was so crazy.
that I didn't know that you teamed with Jay Lee. That's actually really really cool. I guess I mean further asking more about that. Like, did did I don't Sorry, I lost my train of thought here.
You're good. You're good.
Right. What, like with Jay Lethal? How, when you first heard that you were teaming up with him, what was your, like, I guess, reaction? Like, I mean, obviously you're like, holy shit, but was there any nervousness or like, you know, anything like that?
I thought it was a rib at first. I was like, okay, all
Oh,
right,
sure, yeah.
okay. And then I was like, and he was like, yeah, wait, no, I'm serious. And I'm like, and I'm, well, huh? Um, because he's supposed to do a seminar that night, I think, but his either his plane got here like super late, or like AEW didn't allow him to do a seminar. So I don't know what it was, but he came in for a match. I thought it was gonna be a singles match at first, which really blew my mind. Like me and Jay in a singles match. But not that I'm like more disappointed that I got a tag match. It's cool as hell no matter what that I got to be in the ring with Jay Lethal, and that he thought the match was incredible. But I was told maybe 2 or 3 weeks in advance that he'd be in a match with me, and just every day I was just thinking about it. It was just like crazy because I was a mystery partner. It was I was feuding with Zach at the time for the wrestling championship, and Zeke Rose. No, it was Zach and this guy named Leroy Brown, which was one of his like big guy bodyguard type gimmick, and me and a mystery partner. And Jay was announced for the show before I was announced. So I think everyone kind of like, okay, I know what's about to happen. Houston and Jay versus Zach and Leroy. And then Leroy pulls out because he was like he was like dying, like really sick. So I really wish he's able to get that experience with Lethal. But it was ended up being Zach and Zeke against me and the mystery partner. And it was so hard to like cut promos and not just yell out Jay Lethal. But it was that's another thing that like is just hard to describe, because Jay Lethal is I wouldn't say like a idol of mine, but man, he like a phenomenal wrestler who's definitely influenced me in a couple of ways. But it's just another thing that's hard to explain.
He's
It was
definitely
just
like,
very nerve-wracking.
yeah, man. He's definitely a veteran and a master of the business. Love the whole woo off that he had with Ric Flair. You
Yeah.
should have done that with him, man.
I At the end of the match we did like a little Flair strut and we wooed together.
That
So
is, that's like a
I got
dream
my
come
woo in
true.
with Jay Lethal, yeah.
So you briefly mentioned this. I mentioned this earlier, but I just want to mention a date. January 28th, 2023. You won
Yeah.
your first ever singles title, the AAPW Wrestling Championship, from Zach Taylor. Um, how was that? Because I believe that was your first ever singles title, right?
Yes. Well,
Oh,
yeah, technically. I won like a 24/7 belt. I won't
mm.
really count that just because like everyone wins that, you know? I
But
lost it in like a day.
this one was like a good, I think, over 100 plus days, right? So
Yeah.
I guess, just what was your reaction to holding that title? And I guess going off that too, well, you're now knowing that your father is a huge professional, wrestling fan. How was his reaction when you won your first ever singles pro wrestling title?
Man, whenever I first won it, it was a great feeling because the crowd exploded. It wasn't like a huge crowd. It was maybe 80 to 100 people. It wasn't like anything too crazy, but like the roof came off the place because it was like a really long feud. It went from like November to January, which for like indie wrestling, I'm sure you know, is a very long feud to have.
Yeah.
Usually feuds last for like 2 shows, but I finally got the championship and the roof exploded. I was celebrating my ass off. I was uh, hugging the crowd, just like I did it. First major singles championship in at my school. I get to represent my own school now. And I got to the back and it's gonna sound like bad, but it's kind of funny looking back at it. I'm not gonna name drop any names, but a certain veteran of the business shit all over the match, talking about how it was like watching me jerk off in the middle of the ring because of
Oh
how I
man.
celebrated after I won the championship. And after, like, kind of ruined it for like maybe like a week. Before I was like, you know what? Who cares? The crowd loved it.
Yeah.
But
Sometimes, yo,
no, keep going, keep going.
oh, no, I was just gonna say, yeah, sometimes, like, and most of the time, um, crowd reaction over critics' reaction. And
Yeah,
that's my motto. But anyways, yeah, keep
yeah. But yeah, shit all over the match. Uh, kind of like ruined the moment a little bit for me. But the next show after that, I was like, you know what? This is cool. Who cares if it looks like I'm jerking off in the middle of the ring? Like the crowd's into it. I'm doing what I love. It's not even like a big show by no, and like not to bury AAPW, but I'm not like main eventing WrestleMania, embarrassing myself by like celebrating with the crowd, you know. But yeah, it was a surreal moment, and looking back at it, it's a really cool memory to have. And him saying that didn't really affect me that much in the long term, but looking back at it, it's still kind of a funny thing for me to think about.
yeah, you're just out there. Oh my God, thank you so much for this championship
Yeah.
opportunity. Just someone, fuck you. Yeah, you're jerking off in the ring. But and you're also a former tag champ, and I want to ask,
Yes.
like, how was that reaction um, with the singles win or singles championship win versus a tag team championship win?
The tag team championship win was fairly different. It was very weird because we weren't supposed to win the championships.
Hmm.
We were we were it was supposed to be like a squash match at first because it was two big guys. Again, it was Zeke Rose and this big ass dude just jacked to the brim, Aaron Atlas,
Oh.
and it was supposed to be like a little 5 minute squash match just by like two random people thrown together. Uh, and then Pops is the trainer at AAPW. He came in. He was like, you know what? I think we're gonna have you win the belts. Actually, like as like this big upset. You're gonna go on just do like open challenges a bunch of times, which is similar to what I did with my wrestling championship. It was just like one long open challenge, and uh, we go out there breaking kayfabe like a motherfucker here, being told that we're gonna win the belts, but we go out there, we do the thing. Again, big pop, surreal moment because it was my 11th match ever, and
Oh
I won
man.
the championship with. And I wish he was still here. He didn't die,
Yeah,
but
yeah.
like he didn't. He stopped wrestling recently, and I do miss him a lot though. If for whatever reason, Stone, if you're watching this, man, that was such a cool moment to have with you, and I hope we get to do it again sometime. But yeah, winning the tag belts was such a cool moment though. Like winning any championship is just a cool moment, especially if you're a baby face and you hear like that crowd pop. It's so cool, man. It really is. It's like a drug.
Yeah, man. And I guess I want to segue to a kind of rapid fire questions. I got 10 questions for you, and
Okay.
honestly, keep it on the low key, but or down low, but it's not really rapid fire questions. I remember I did this with Eric Lockhart once, and he just did like a story for each question. So if you want to do that, I don't care. So
All right.
you do you.
If it's a quick answer, I'll give you a quick answer. But if I can go on a story, I'll tell a story. Is
Yeah,
that
yeah.
fine?
Okay,
Okay.
that's honestly great. Okay, first question: favorite match you've ever had?
Easiest question of my life. Actually, no, it's not. I take that back.
That's crazy.
My best match was a 30-minute iron. It was a 30-minute Iron Man
Hmm.
against ETC, and it was whenever I dropped the wrestling championship to him. Very, very cool moment, and I love that match. I've probably watched that back like 10 times. it's just such a cool match in my opinion. It's like, even looking at it now, I like wouldn't change a thing about it. But on the other side, you have the tag team match with Jay Lethal as my favorite. So I don't know which one to say whenever I am asked that question, whether I go with Lethal or if I go with my favorite match. But one of those two are definitely it.
For sure. Number 2, your dream opponent in the Texas independent circuit.
Ooh. Does Brian Keith count?
Yeah.
Because I know he goes out of state a lot, and he's mostly
Yeah.
an out of state guy. Does
I
Brian
mean,
Keith count?
he's new Texas Pro World Champion, right? So, I guess so.
All right, we'll do Brian Keith. If we're talking about still in Texas, not going out of state, I know I've had a match with him before. Let me go with Danny O'Ryan again.
Danny O'Ryan.
I love working with Danny.
I remember first meeting Danny. He was a cool guy, and then once the cameras turn on, man, he will switch. But then, like immediately right after, he's like, "Ah, man, that was great, guys."
Yeah.
Third, the worst bump you've ever taken.
Ooh. I don't know if you would consider it a bump. But I was in a tag team ladder match. It was me and Stone tag team versus Kane Carter and Alec Bullsdale. And Kane Carter sets the ladder up between like the barricade. So like the barricade's here, the ladder's like right here. And I go to whip him into it. He reverses it and he flapjacks me onto the ladder. And I ribs first on the ladder, knocked the wind out of me. And then as soon as I hit the ladder, I like slingshot this way. So I take like a whole like neck bump on the concrete.
Oh.
So it was like a double whammy. It was like boom, boom. It was not great. Luckily, I had like 5 minutes to catch my breath after that, but that sucked. And then second place goes the same exact match. I was hanging onto the belts on the little suspender thing, I guess you would call it. And Alec comes in, throws my leg this way, and gives me an RKO off the ceiling. And that's second place.
Dude, you that match took you away, man.
Yeah, that match took 5 years off my career right there. Just that alone.
Gotta retire in like 3 years because of that match.
I had to retire at the ripe old age of 16 after that match.
What is number 4? What is the worst memory you've had of professional wrestling?
Oh God.
You can take your time.
A little bit of awkward silence here. Worst memory. Probably the unnamed veteran shitting on my match after the wrestling championship. Because for a while there, I didn't even want the belt anymore. I just wanted to walk away and leave. I was like, make it vacant. I don't want to be here anymore. And it fucked me up for a little bit. I'm not gonna lie. But after I got like over like that, you know what? Fuck that guy. I was fine. But for a little bit there, it really messed me up. So I'd say unnamed veteran was my worst memory.
Don't name drop him, but is this unnamed veteran known in the Texas scene or just like in the national?
National.
Okay, like on TV.
I will say former WWE. That's all I'm gonna say.
No.
Yeah.
Oh man.
Like I understand why you said it, but like, come on now, that's like not the right words to say. I definitely took a little bit like, I definitely calmed down with the crowd because I kind of saw his point. But like, man, he really like was ruthless with me that day, and it really killed it.
You, like straight up, just
no, it was just like
passive aggressive type shit.
Passive aggressive, which is a lot worse in my opinion.
Yeah, he's like, man, yeah, that was pretty terrible out there, man. That was terrible.
Pretty much.
Pretty shit.
I was like, wow, you don't gotta be like a dick about it. Like I'm not even I'm a year and a half in the business. Like, come on now.
I hope this like veteran watches this like interview and just like
he
comments.
Won't. He doesn't even know who I am. I bet he doesn't even remember telling me this.
Who influenced you the most in your wrestling career, would you say?
Ooh. Influence as in like seeing someone on TV and wanting to be like them, or like getting into the business and learning from somebody?
You can do both if you want.
Okay. I'll say controversy, CM Punk.
Oh.
CM Punk and Bryan Danielson for sure. CM Punk, I don't remember exactly what he did. He was the first person in wrestling to like make me feel strong emotions. Like when I learned he got fired, 7-year-old Miles cried like badly.
You cry when he got
And then
fired like a couple weeks
yeah.
ago, last week?
No. Whenever he got fired from WWE. And then 15-year-old Miles cried when he came back to the business. And then
Yeah.
17-year-old Miles cried again whenever he got fired.
I hope
Um,
he does. I hope he doesn't influence your backstage presence.
oh God. Hey, you got a problem with me? You got a problem? Cry me a
Uh,
river.
Go to media presses and just talk shit about your other coworkers.
Talk about the unnamed veteran. And then Bryan Danielson, another one who got a big reaction out of me as a little kid. I just loved his wrestling. I loved the Yes movement. I loved his matches. Another one that made me cry never he retired. Uh, and then for like getting into the business, I never met him, but I learned about him after I started wrestling. Will Ospreay and Kenny Omega. Those two are also two big influences on like my wrestling style. But Zach Taylor, Breaking Kayfabe, biggest rival in wrestling probably. He's also a big influence of mine, just by learning from him. And he's not gonna want me to say his name, so I won't say it because he's a big kayfabe guy.
Yeah.
But he's a little bit evil, if you know that name.
Okay. Okay. Best in-ring chemistry that you have with.
ETC, without a doubt. We've had like 8 matches together, and
Yeah.
every single one of them was phenomenal in my opinion.
Literally right before this interview, probably like 30 minutes or so, or an hour. I saw bits of that Iron Man match y'all had. Incredible shit, man.
Thank
Incredible
you.
shit.
Thank you.
Proudest moment in your career.
Another Iron Man match. That match, like, I think about that almost every day. It's literally like, I know it's not a perfect match. I'm sure someone with more experience than me can pick it apart. But as of right now, I see that as like the best match I've ever had, and I still wouldn't change anything about it. Like I go back and I try to pick it apart. I just can't. I love that match so much, and I'm so proud of it. And if an unnamed vet wants to shit on it, they're not gonna ruin my mood about that.
AEW or WWE?
How much money we talking?
I mean, I was thinking about which you prefer watching, but I mean,
Oh,
prefer
okay,
working
okay.
too.
Watching probably AEW. I
Mm,
watched SmackDown last night, and there were a couple of matches that were just like insulting to watch.
mm.
But AEW, I just say AEW. Yeah, I think their match quality is a little bit better. I'm not really a big fan of modern wrestling though. I watch New Japan
Oh,
sometimes.
yeah.
I watched a lot of like not like mid 90s and like early 2000s a lot, and just New
Yeah.
Japan. That's like the main thing I watch.
Yeah. I feel you, man. I mean, but you're gonna pick WWE once they give you that big fat paycheck.
Yo,
You're
whoever
like,
gives me
oh,
more money.
yeah, I love WWE. What are you talking about?
Yeah. What do you mean? I never watched SmackDown and thought that the matches were insulting. What do you mean?
Did you not see the Miz beat up John Cena on Raw?
I
Like,
That was pretty funny. That was pretty funny.
did you not see that was entertainment right there? Okay. Number 9, long-term career goal.
Get a contract probably.
Yeah.
Whether
Eh,
that's like MLW or like WWE, regardless of that pay thing, just get a contract no matter what. I feel like if you okay, let me rephrase that. Not a contract, but like being able to like live off of wrestling.
Mm.
Like Matt Cardona. He's not signed anywhere, I don't think. He might have like an NWA contract, I think. But he's mostly on the indies. He probably makes like $5,000 a match, and he's living good off of the indies. That's my goal, is to maybe not $5,000 a match, but like being able to like pay rent and like utilities and groceries off of wrestling, and maybe have like some sort of side hustle, like DoorDash or something to cover the rest.
Yeah, man. And maybe you're gonna be like famous, and then the people who you DoorDash to are like wrestling fans, and they're like, "Oh shit, is this
Oh shit, is
Houston?"
that Houston?
And our final question, simple question, and honestly, I think you answered it earlier, but I already wrote the question down, so we're gonna continue with this question. Favorite wrestler of all time?
Oh, of all time. I can give you like 5 different answers based on your definition of favorite.
I'll tell you what. Do your Mount Rushmore of Houston
Okay,
Hendrix's goats.
okay. People don't like my Mount Rushmores because they're all modern.
Hey man, that's fine, man. Because
Bret
that's what you
Hart,
live for, right? Bret Hart.
Bret Hart, Sami Zayn,
Mm.
uh, Kenny Omega, Will Ospreay, probably.
Them dogs freaking out in the
Yeah.
back. Hottie hates Will Ospreay for some reason. He hates. I'm like, man, he's not that bad. But
Tell him
I
if he has a
guess
problem with me, I'll go CM Punk on his ass.
that's crazy.
Tell him to cry me a river.
Cry me a river, Jack Perry. But I guess I want to give the floor to you. Drop down. I mean, you're injured now, but if you do have future dates for some reason, drop down your social medias. Whatever is Houston Hendrix, just share it. Whatever you need to share. The floor is yours.
Yeah, I've been lacking on my YouTube matches recently. I'll try to get that uploaded pretty soon. So just look up Houston Hendrix, you'll find me. Houston Hendrix _ is just like my username for everything. I think my TikTok, my Twitter, my Instagram, it's all just Houston Hendrix with an _ at the end. Matches coming up, hopefully somewhere around the Texas scene pretty soon. I know I think I'm set to be back to wrestling sooner than expected. I think I was given around 6 months-ish, but I think I can get back in like 2 or 3. I think I'll be back soon. I know I got Inspire. I'm hopefully gonna stay there. I know AAPW will always be my home. Baracho Pro. Hopefully see me on New Texas soon. I'm just hoping to take over Texas wrestling whenever I come back,
Oh, yeah. And hopefully in the future take over national
Yeah.
wrestling. But thank you so much, Houston Hendrix, for coming on the show. It was such a pleasure talking to you, man. And talking about our past, talking about your whole career. I'm really happy to see where you are now. And
Yeah,
thank you,
man.
everyone, for watching and or listening. Follow Houston Hendrix and all his social medias, which we posted down in the description below. And subscribe, like, comment, do whatever you need to do. I mean, just support me.
Subscribe to Wrestless Official, everybody. It's Houston Hendrix certified.
Houston Hendrix certified. And remember, guys, stay restless.